and welcome to the Garden of the Gods Visitor and Nature Center. My name is Jennifer. I'm a park interpreter here at the Garden of the Gods Park. And today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about fossils. Fossils are simply or geologically defined as any remains, trace, or even an imprint of a plant or animal from a previous geological time or since prehistory. And this is usually preserved, that trace, imprint, or remains of an animal is usually preserved somehow within the Earth's crust. Now, the most common way that fossils are preserved in the Earth's crust is either they become part of the surrounding rock, or sometimes groundwater will move through that rock in the making, and it will replace with minerals, and so you get really spectacular or pretty fossils. But mostly they just become part of the surrounding rock. Now, if you know your three rock types, fossils are only found in sedimentary rocks. Sedimentary rocks are simply layers of past sediment or dirt that have been compacted into rock. If you aren't looking at fossils in person, there's a great way that when we're out walking in the field and we see a fossil or any kind of interesting geological feature, how we can demonstrate how big this fossil actually is with coins. So if I put a penny on this fossil, everybody pretty much knows how big a penny is, and in fact you can go get a penny right now and compare how big that leaf fossil is. So of these four types of fossils, plant fossils, invertebrate, vertebrate fossils, and trace fossils, all but plant fossils can be found within Garden of the Gods Park. I'd like to give you an example of some plant fossils, even though they did not come from our park itself, but one of them did come from the surrounding area. And this is an example of petrified wood. This fossil is part of that mineralization process I talked about. Did not become part of the surrounding rock, but it's actually been replaced by that groundwater movement of mineralization. It's very heavy, but it's retained some of its very obvious bark or tree characteristics. Another way that we have plant fossils is through this, and this is a perfectly preserved leaf within this rock, and you can see just that it's right there, and we've got some other parts of the plants. Plant fossils are pretty rare just because plants are usually so delicate, unless we're talking about our massive trees and a little bit firmer structure to be preserved. Trace fossils can also be found in the park. This example from our Dakota Formation is all of these bumps, and we've got quite a bit of networking in here. This was done, the theory is that these were created by some kind of marine life that burrowed in and out of the sand, and the cast of their burrows or the imprint of the actual animal was preserved, but we're not really sure what animal made this. So this would be a trace fossil. Another trace fossil would be footprints. Invertebrate fossils are not as impressive as dinosaurs, but they're a little bit more common because more of the animal can be preserved. We have a beautiful example of some ammonites in our limestone right here. And an ammonite is an extinct sea creature that lived during the Cretaceous era, about the same time that our dinosaurs were roaming around. And ammonites also went extinct with the dinosaurs. An ammonite was a squid, kind of had a squid face in this curly snail shell. So this is an example of an invertebrate fossil, our ammonite. We also have an example of a clam fossil, and this is in our Niobrara limestone. It's actually quite heavy. And let's get our favorite penny back, and you can see exactly how large that clam shell is now. Another invertebrate fossil, and one of the oldest ones we have in the park at approximately 255 million years old, is called a stromatolite. And a stromatolite is a very primitive fossil. It is actually a bacteria, an algae colony that forms in a tidal environment. And they trap flowing sediments. So little bits of sand, also bits of other sea creatures will get trapped in these kind of slimy mounds, and that will form the stromatolite. And the stromatolite is creating some of these crinkly lines right here. Stromatolites are pretty rare on Earth today, but they are still forming in Shark Bay, Australia. We've only had one vertebrate fossil that I'm aware of found in our park, Theophytelia cari, which was an iguanodon. Obviously, this isn't a fossil, but it's a pretty accurate representation of her. And there's more information about Theophytelia, the Garden of the Gods dinosaur, rare and unique fossil find, on another video called Theophytelia. One of the best stories of a fossil find within the Garden of the Gods park is this little guy. This is one of our ammonites, and in 2015, when the Visitor and Nature Center was being renovated, there was a construction crew that was just outside our building here and was digging a very shallow trench for the dumpsters. And the worker saw this and fortunately brought in this little guy just as is. We haven't touched it up at all, and gave it to us and said, I think somebody dropped this. Well, we knew right away that that worker had actually found an ammonite fossil. It's beautifully preserved, and it has all of the original shell component and even some of the surrounding rock layer attached to it. So this is one of our favorite fossil finds in Garden of the Gods. A baculite was a sea creature that lived here during the Cretaceous seaway time, which is about 70 million years ago. And it was a long shell with, again, that kind of odd squid face looking out of it. So this is just some of the quick information about fossils here at Garden of the Gods. With 9 rock layers spanning over 300 million years of geological time, we're bound to have some really fun finds out there. Do keep in mind that collecting in the park is discouraged and illegal. So please preserve any artifacts or fossils that you find within the park. Leave them for the next visitor to enjoy. Australia, you will find the stromatolites. Don't talk about Shark Bay, it doesn't matter. So those stromatolites are... I know, I'm reading my definition.
Test.
Moving through that trace, that imprint, I don't want to say that, replace, the minerals were replaced in the groundwater, will replace that actual former living piece. I'm not saying it right.
Do I need to start from the top?
I do. Sedimentary rock layers out in the park. And I'd like to go ahead and, not stupid. Where did I leave off? I don't want to like to go ahead. What did I say before that? Quick. Okay, stop it and rewind it. And that's the most obvious way that a fossil can be found in. That is the most obvious layer. No. And that is where all fossils are found is in these sedimentary rocks. Australia, you will find the stromatolites. Don't talk about Shark Bay, it doesn't matter. So those stromatolites are